what is up, everybody? I hope you're having a wonderful Friday. Wanted to yell it out, man. I'm so glad it's Friday. Tomorrow, I got a big day ahead of me, so I hope you guys will wish me some luck because my audition was bland, they said, but they're having me read with the cast, which 9 out of 10, not 9 out of 10, which 9 out of 10 times means that they want to cast you. But it's not a given. If you ever heard the Harrison Ford story, I don't know if you guys watch that video, because you guys only watch certain videos. But let me tell you this Ford story real quick, if you guys don't know it. So Harrison Ford, up and coming actor, plays an extra. He's trying to do other things, auditioning for other roles. And one of these, think about if you ever remember that video game L.A. Noire, or just like back in the days of like the Black Dahlia and all that, there were some of those legendary producers or legendary owners of studios. One of them was still alive and had told Harrison Ford, you just don't have it. He's like, when Clark Gable first showed up on the screen, it's like you knew whatever character he was playing, that was him all the way. I just don't see you having a future in this industry. So, dejected, Harrison Ford becomes a carpenter. But he's never done carpentry in his life, and he's doing carpentry for movie studio sets. And he's there with books, learning as he's trying to do this. And his agent said, hey, look, I have this director that just got through shooting this movie called American Graffiti. He's like, now, you're not going to get the part, but they just need somebody to, sit in and read while they're still trying to cast for this character. Would you be willing to go in and just read? He's like, yes, I know it sucks, you're not going to get the part, but perhaps this will give you some exposure to this director if he ever does anything in the future, that he'll remember your face, that maybe the way you read, something about you might stick out, and hey, you never know, it doesn't hurt. So begrudgingly, he's like, yeah, fuck it, I'll do it. So he goes in there, and the whole time he's just kind of like put off because he knows he's not going to get the part. So he's just reading the part like fucking like all sarcastic and just like almost like my shit don't stink, like fuck goddamn young kids, who's this hottie Carrie Fisher at freaking, what was she, 20 years old, who's this dorky looking freaking blonde headed dude, damn, this guy's tall, I'm not gonna fuck with him. Wait, what's this guy doing in a goddamn gold costume? I doubt he was in his gold costume. Anyways, he's reading sarcastically, very, very sarcastically. At the end of the audition, everybody leaves. None other than George Lucas walks up to him and says, I know you were told you were coming in here to read and that you're not going to get the part, but I would like to offer you the role of Han Solo. He's like, that is exactly what I was looking for. Somebody who could be sarcastic, somebody who could have like this bravado, have this manly look like you have, and who could be an asshole. And there's Harrison Ford's story. The rest is history. A few years later, after the first Indiana Jones comes out, that same owner, producer, whatever, is at a restaurant. Harrison Ford is there with his agent. The guy, the owner, producer, whatever, sends him over a note, writes, I was wrong about you. Harrison Ford didn't see who it was from, but he knew who it was. He didn't see the guy, but he knew who it was from. He just grabbed it and tossed that shit on the floor. So, while some may not be so arrogant, I couldn't be that arrogant. When I was told, okay, your audition was a little bland, but we want to have you come in and read anyways. You take that shit as constructive criticism. You don't let that hold you down. So what I'm trying to say is, and I'm putting out this message, don't let anyone hold you back or hold you down, because a lot of the times that's just constructive criticism. This producer or owner wasn't giving Harrison Ford constructive criticism. The one who was his agent saying, you're not going to get casted for it, but still, go over there and, at least make this effort. There's constructive criticism. If somebody says, hey, your audition was a little bland, but we still like you to come in and read. That's constructive criticism. The thing that's most important to getting a role in a movie is auditioning. I've shown now 3 times that I fucking suck at auditioning. So, I don't know if you guys know, there's this actor named Will Smith, and last year he slapped this guy that he's 3 times... No, I'm playing. You guys already know the slap heard around the world. Fucking bully, man. Guy who trains to become Muhammad Ali for a summer goes up and smacks a guy he's 3 times bigger than. Do you think he would have done that shit to Michael Clark Duncan, to Ving Rhames, to freaking... He wouldn't even have done that shit to Denzel. Denzel would have whooped his ass like in Training Day. I know, you know, Ethan Hawke got the best of him at the end, but... you know for a fact, if somebody was up there that was Will Smith's size, he wouldn't have done that shit. He's a fucking bully, and I've told my story about bullies before. How I boxed one, I broke his fucking nose and told him stop bullying other people after we agreed on a safe mouth guard, full-on guard boxing match at the rec center. Because I hate bullies, man. I fucking hate them. Anyways, if you guys haven't seen it yet, which you guys probably have, Chris Rock tore his ass a new one. Let me adjust myself here. Not used to being on this side. Feels weird. Okay. No, I'm going to go back to the other side. There we go.
Released it in the full edit. The shit about Will Smith was ruthless.
Yeah.
Ruthless.
Smith. Everybody knows. Gonna happen. No. Fuck that shit. I took that hit like Pacquiao, motherfucker. I took it like motherfucking Pacquiao, okay? Shit, man. Did it hurt? Yeah, motherfucker, it hurt. And people are, well, you guys are fighting all the time. We're not fighting. First of all, I know you can't tell on camera. Will Smith is significantly bigger than me. We are not the same size, okay? We are not. This guy, Will Smith does movies with his shirt off. You've never seen me do a movie with my shirt off. If I'm in a movie getting open heart surgery, I got on a sweater. Will Smith played Muhammad Ali in a movie. You think I auditioned for that part? He played Muhammad Ali. I played Pookie in New Jack City. Pookie, motherfucker. I played a piece of corn in Pootie Tang. Shit, even in animation, this motherfucker's bigger. I'm a zebra, he's a shark. What the fuck, man? But, Will Smith practices selective outrage. Practices selective outrage. Because everybody knows what the fuck happened. Everybody that really knows I had nothing to do with that shit. I didn't have any entanglements. I did not have any entanglement. And for people that don't know, and everybody know, his wife was fucking her son's friend, okay? Now, I normally would not talk about this shit. But for some reason, these niggas put that shit on the internet. I have no idea why 2 talented people would do something that fucking low down. What the fuck? That we all been cheated on. Everybody in here have been cheated on. None of us have ever been interviewed by the person that cheated on us on television. None of us. It's like, hey, I was sucking somebody else's dick. How did that make you feel? Why the fuck would you do that shit? She hurt him way more than he hurt me. Okay?
Amen to that, brother.
Okay?
Amen.
And by the way, he does
Hell
that
yeah.
shit. Everybody in the world called him a bitch. I tried to call the motherfucker and give him my condolences. He ain't pick up for me. Everybody tried to call the motherfucker and give him my condolences. He ain't pick up for me. Everybody called that man a bitch. Fucking Charlemagne called him a bitch, and the Breakfast Club called him a bitch, and the View, and the Talk, and every rapper, and fucking the Drink Champs called him a fucking bitch. Everybody called him a bitch. They called his wife a predator. Everybody called him a bitch. Everybody. And who's he hit? Me. A nigga he know he could beat. That is some bitch ass shit. That's what the fuck happened, okay? The fuck out of here, man. The fuck? What the fuck? I do nothing to this motherfucker, okay? His whatever. Years ago, his wife said I should quit the Oscars. I shouldn't host because her man didn't get nominated for Emancipation.
No,
the biggest piece of shit ever. Okay? And then so the nigga gives me a fucking concussion. No, not Emancipation. I fucked up the joke. Concussion. She fucking said he should quit because Will didn't get nominated for concussion. What the fuck? What the fuck? So then I do some jokes about her. Who gives a fuck? That's how it is. She starts it, I finish it, okay? That's what the fuck happened. Nobody's picking on this bitch. She started this shit. Nobody was picking on her. Nobody was picking on her. She said, me, a fucking grown-ass man should quit his job because her husband didn't get nominated for concussion.
Released it in the full edit. The shit about Will Smith was
That's not my editing.
ruthless.
Yeah.
Just a video I found.
Ruthless. It's just like, imagine the, you know, in life you play chess. You move pieces around. You say, I do this, and the counter would be that. And
Yeah.
like, imagine the thought, like, I'm just going to slap Chris Rock, one of the greatest stand-up comedians of all time. It's not like he's going to tear my very vulnerable life apart after I smack him with some of the best comedy that anybody's ever written. And he's going to hone it over a year before he releases it.
Yeah.
Like, what a terrible, unprovoked attack. What a dumb thing to do. To like be that person who's like publicly loved, you know, like Will Smith was until that moment. I mean, until that moment, nobody really had a bad thing to say about, maybe he didn't like one movie, or maybe he thought the superhero movie was dumb, but everybody loved that guy.
I love the superhero.
Everybody loved that guy.
I loved Will. I love Will. I still love Will.
But those two keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth. Those two are what sunk him. If he just slapped Chris Rock and then sat down and didn't say anything,
People would think it was a joke.
they wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah.
It would kind of drift off, and people would forget about it. They would think, and they would say to Chris, "Was that on purpose? Did you guys plan that?" Oh. Then he would have skated. But I'm not happy that it happened, but I'm happy the way it happened, because when I was trying to explain to someone who's not involved in show business how bizarre the industry is, and how like untethered those people are to either morals
Reality.
or ethics or just the reality of human nature.
Yeah.
They are completely connected to the zeitgeist in terms of what's popular and what's trendy and what's accepted by our group and what's rejected by our group, that no one has, I mean, not no one, but in general, the mindset of the people in Hollywood, there's very little independent thought. It's all groupthink. So when Will Smith, after smacking Chris Rock and all that other craziness, goes on stage and wins the Academy Award and gets a fucking standing ovation, that was like, that's those people. That's this they don't know what to do. They don't have the ability to say, hey, that's not right. I don't care if you're famous. I don't care if you just won the Oscar. You can't assault people. What you did is ridiculous. The way you're behaving is crazy. It didn't even make sense. It wasn't even proportionate to what he said. It wasn't like you overreacted in such a strange way. I have to wonder, are you okay? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah.
No one did that. They all like, yeah.
You know, I had a very, very good point, and it just fucking slipped my mind because he was speaking. But God, I don't even. I had a really, really, really good point about what he's talking about. I'm not anything like Hollywood people, obviously. Shit. Couple movies doesn't make you a fucking movie star. It just makes you, just a person who is, can live off of, making movies, not, with, a $200,000 car in the garage and all that. No, far from it. But how he says, these people, like, they just do not know how to react just because they are so dejected from reality is so goddamn true. I mean, they are so used to being waited on hand and foot. They're so used to having free grab bags whenever they go to a special event that they're invited to with $100,000, freaking watch, $800, freaking tie, $15,000 watch that all these millionaires are given. So then all of a sudden it becomes, oh, okay, now, now I've made it. Now, now I can talk shit. I can do what I want. These people are going to kiss my ass no matter what. Sad. That's a sad part of even the music industry. That shit happens. When people get a big head about themselves, that's what brings them down. And I have a theory. Just hear me out real quick. This doesn't have to do anything with Will Smith or Chris Rock, but I have a theory. If you guys have ever listened to me talk about music, I've said it 100 times. I was never a fan of Tupac. Now, that's not saying he made shitty music. I'm just saying I was never a fan of Tupac. There is an interview that he does, honestly, and you can look it up. Look at Tupac high school interview where people that he's talking shit about being, gay or whatever. And mind you, the mindset back then was a hell of a lot different than what it is now. So calling somebody the F word or whatever, dissing somebody by saying you're this, you're nothing but an F in this, that, those words were thrown around easily. And nowadays you don't dare utter it, which, they made bigger strides than, racial movements, which I still don't understand. But anyways, yeah, where was I getting at? So my theory is this. He came across extremely feminine in that. He moves out to the East Coast. He's accepted into Juilliard. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. You gotta be fucking amazingly talented. He obviously was to attend Juilliard. It's fucking Juilliard. That's like MIT. But that, Juilliard's for acting, for writers, for fucking musicians, for you name it. That's like getting into MIT. I mean, he got into fucking Juilliard. And so he spends all his time out on the East Coast, becomes more or less an East Coast rapper, meets Diddy, meets fucking Biggie. They're homeboys for life, this and that. Goes to a session where Biggie is rapping, gets shot, like 9 times? Right away thinks it's, Diddy and freaking Biggie. And they're supposed to be homeboys, like, almost best friends. Comes out to the, West Coast. All of a sudden, West Side till we ride or die, death row this, fuck this motherfucking asshole, fuck it, bitch, I fucked your wife. We bust some bad boys, fuck my life. Hit him up. Listen to that song. He rips Bad Boy a new one. Now, Biggie, on the other hand, he grew up in the ghetto. He grew up in the projects. He grew up with his family scrounging for money. How are we going to get this? How are we going to get that? Here's my theory. Tupac never grew up a gangster. He grew up in the suburbs. He had a good mother. I never heard much about his father, so I can't speak on his father much. He had a wonderful mother. Attended Juilliard. All of a sudden, when he gets signed, he starts, he's around all these guys who grew up in the ghetto, who grew up in the projects, and who are gangbangers. And it's like, you almost feel like you're adopted into that lifestyle. And then he starts to act gangster. Who else did that recently? Juice WRLD. I only heard of him when Godzilla came out. And they said R.I.P. to him. I'm like, oh, because I don't listen to hip hop that much, very rarely. I'm like, oh, what happened to this dude? And there happened to be at the time a documentary on HBO Max that came out about him. Grew up in the suburbs, attended a good school, has both parents. Starts, his rapping career. Nowhere near gangs, in school or this or that. Young man, all of a sudden, once he gets in the game, gets surrounded by all these gang bangers, this and that. Starts living that lifestyle. Look what happened to both of them. Different circumstances, yes. But both involving being around the wrong crowd. I don't know who Juice WRLD had in his camp that snitched on him. Or snitched on all of them. But for him to have taken as many Percocet as he did, there's no way that he could have possibly thought his body could have handled that. Now, let me tell you guys something about the medication, because I know a thing or two. I actually know a lot about the medications because I had to write an SOP when I was at the Department of Veterans Affairs, because we handled logistics, and a lot of the stuff that came in were Schedule 2, Schedule 3, Schedule 4 medications. Schedule 2 medications are the ones that people are after. That's your oral morphine, your intravenous morphine, oral, I already said oral. That's your Oxycontin, better known as Percocet. That's your hydrocodone, better known as Vicodin. Vicodin used to be a Schedule 3, so they could send you refills. But then all of a sudden, people started fucking it up for the rest of the other people who really need it. So now, say these people who live 100 miles from a hospital have to go to the doctor just to get seen again, and the doctor rewrite them the prescription. They can no longer get sent refills, which would have sucked because my grandmother had to take Vicodin when she started developing dementia, because she would fall and always break, a leg, an arm or something whenever, we weren't like closely watching her, and I would like, pick her up and, take her from one area of the house to the other. And so one day, the day that I find out that, I have a fractured back and that pain just does not go away, then all of a sudden it starts to get progressively worse. And what I have is degenerative, so it's just going to get worse over time. So they prescribe me Vicodin. You take it and your body starts to get used to it. You can take, the very first time I took one, I was like, holy shit, I don't like this fucking feeling. I feel like everything is like just, fucking spinning or whatever. Like I would close my eyes and be all out of it. Then I would be like, second, third time I took it, I'd be like, oh, this is kind of euphoric, like they describe it. Then, start taking it a little more and more. It's like, yeah, I like the way this makes me feel. feel like I could function or concentrate. That's for some people. Other people, will take it and feel like, man, now I could go to sleep. I feel good. I feel rested. For me, it was take the pain away from my back, but it was also having that side effect of making you feel like all fucking out of it. But then what I noticed was taking 2 every 4 to 6 hours wasn't doing shit anymore. And I dare not ask my doctor, hey, can you up the milligrams? But I just told him, yeah, I'm taking the 2 that you prescribed, but it's not really, He's like, oh, your body gets used to it, this and that. He's like, here, I'll prescribe you more. 112 Vicodin every 28 days. I'm like, holy shit. There is no way I'm taking this many, Vicodin in 28 days for 4 years. And so I would only have to call it in like once every few months because I was not going to take that much. My dad was taking 160 Percocet every fucking 11 to 12 days. And he had reason to. He had a rod in his knee. But from all the Percocet is usually... Percocet alone is the active compound, the opiate compound, and acetaminophen, which is Tylenol. That's Percocet. If you're just going for straight up oxycodone, that is just a small ass little pill that is just the opium compound. My dad's liver was fucked up beyond repair, so he had cirrhosis. Your liver is the only organ in your body that can heal itself. So with him taking all this acetaminophen, anybody who doesn't know, you'll know now. But for those of you who do know, Tylenol fucks up your liver. So the more and more Tylenol you take, your liver gets messed up. So with him already having a fucked up liver, everything on him starts swelling. His knee looks like, because that's how it started. A pool table. They all own, all my uncles and everything, they all own bars in the north side of Denver. Hole in the wall bars, you would call them dives. And he was working on this pool table and it fell on it. It crushed his knee. And then they put a rod in his leg to stay straight. And one thing that everybody always said about my dad was he's like the best dancer you'd ever seen. And so they gave him a choice. They said, look, we could save your life if we amputate your leg. Because, we don't want to see you taking this many Percocet, but, your life could be saved if you do this. And that would be a hard choice for some people. I think about it. If I were confronted with that, what would I do? Well, I want to live. I want to see my daughter grow up. I want to have grandchildren. I want to see all that one day. No, not for him. He continued to take the Percocet. He passed away. I stopped taking the Vicodin. My point about all that is your body starts getting immune to more and more to where it becomes sickening because the effect that when I first started taking 2 every 4 to 6 hours, I could take 6 tablets and it would have the combined strength of 2 that I used to take before. And that's what was scaring me because I'm like, I don't want to be taking this shit like this. So I asked the doctor, like, is there anything else? And I got off of Vicodin. Like, it was very easy. I didn't have any side effects. The same with alcohol. Didn't have any side effects. Didn't get, clammy or, like how some people described, like, I lucked out because I wasn't taking it in mass doses like my father. But that Juice World, why would he take 60 fucking Percocet? They Narcaned him multiple times. He fucking went and slipped into a coma, was brain dead. I mean, Jesus Christ, man. Like, if it wasn't for these ghetto ass people that he met, fuck, he would still be here. Young, talented man. Yeah, he might have gotten in trouble, but, a lot of celebrities could hire a good lawyer, might have spent, maybe a year or 2 behind bars, gotten out, something, who knows. But just like Tupac wanting to be a gangster, claiming to be hardcore, claiming to be this, gets shot and killed because of the people he's around. They're real ghetto gangsters. They're real fuckers that you don't want to mess with. He thinks he's adopted into it, killed young. Biggie was just he was just a bystander to that shit because people thought that he had something to do with it. He gets killed. But he grew up in this shit. He knew what was up. Juice WRLD grew up in the suburbs. Didn't have to die so young. So, anyways, that's my thought on them. I know I gibber and jabber a lot, but I want to go on to the next video after this. So I hope you enjoyed this one. I want to hear what the rest of the comedians had to say about Chris Rock just fucking unleashing on Will Smith. So I'll be back. So, gonna get into a video that I haven't done in a while. He moved to one a week, and yeah, he put out a couple recently. So why don't we get into that chapter and see what he has in store for us this time? I know you guys might like Mike. Mike is awesome. Still my favorite YouTuber. So I don't want to steal his lines. But let's check it out. How about that?
2015, with his wife Zoe following him a year later as a graduate student. Maleed worked for Google and most recently as lead software engineer for Amazon in Redmond, Washington. Zoe, a PhD student at the University of Washington, Tacoma, and then as a software engineer at a mortgage company. Both were self-styled techies who had moved across the world to be at the very heart of it in the Seattle area. And that house, it was a beautiful place and cost a pretty penny, but software engineers working for the companies that they were successful. So far so good for this young couple, and Zoe's mother, she would move in with them too into that very house, as we can just presume that she's probably getting on a little bit in years. Now this is when the trouble began. Now this part, it's a little bit vague with all of the news reports that have been released, but Zoe appeared on a podcast, or on a podcast that was streaming, and the podcast was about gaining employment in, the tech industry, in the software industry, and it seems like the podcast was specifically for Persian people, from people from Iran, and that sort of thing. Fair enough, right? I mean, she worked in the industry, her husband was getting pretty big in the industry, she would know everything somebody would need to do. Someone heard her speak about this on this podcast, and they liked what they heard, but not in a normal, healthy way at all. It appears now he may have heard this on the app Clubhouse. Now, Clubhouse is a fairly new app. It's only been up since around 2020. It's one you have to be invited to join, and essentially it's an audio-only thing. You join rooms, and people are talking about different topics and blah, blah, blah. And apparently this podcast, this discussion, was played on Clubhouse. So Zoe was speaking on Clubhouse about this very topic, and who just so happened to tune in? 38-year-old Ramin Kodahharamrazai. Ramin was originally, much like Zoe and Maleed, from Iran, and he was a trucker who lived in Texas, in the Houston area. He had been married for 7 years to a woman named Nida, and they had a daughter together. His story kind of almost mirrors Zoe and Maleed's story. Him and his wife, they married in Iran before moving across to America. Now, they had actually divorced back in 2018, Ramin and his wife, well, ex-wife. But it still seems that they remained close. In fact, one thing we'll find about Ramin is that it seems like he didn't have very many friends at all. His wife would say they would talk all the time, and he would tell her about, romances he had, women he was seeing, and she would say he was telling her this, not as like some kind of evil ex trying to twist the knife him, but more like he had nobody else to talk to. A lonely guy who, as a trucker, he would go on long, road trips, right? And while he was driving, perhaps he tuned in to the Clubhouse app, listening to people speaking in his native tongue, in Farsi, Persian. And then one time he heard 33-year-old Zoe. And Ramin and Zoe, they sparked up a friendship, yapping away about this and that, talking on Clubhouse. He followed up with her after she had spoken one day. Now, why he even tuned into that discussion? He was a 38-year-old trucker. What interest would he have in getting jobs in the tech industry? Who knows? Maybe he just liked hearing people speak his native tongue. But anyway, regardless, they started speaking away, and she is somebody who had a bit of a platform, a bit of an online presence. She was only more than happy to help out, chat. They spoke fairly often, apparently even meeting up one time, even though she lived all the way in Seattle, he lived in Texas, but he would travel all the time. Way too many times, as you will see. But Ramen, it seemed like he was becoming a bit full on for Zoe. It seemed like he wanted a little bit more than just a friendship, and then that's when Zoe cut him off. He had fallen for her, and she wasn't, too keen on that at all. And she said, okay, let's stop this right here. Let's put it to bed. This can't end well. How right she was. He then began one of the most obsessive stalking campaigns of Zoe and her husband, Millard, you will ever hear. And so began the messages, the calls, the gifts, the knocking on the door. One time Zoe even had a business trip in Denver, from Seattle to Denver. He followed her. One particular time, he called her over 100 times in one day. Can you believe that? And I mean, obviously, what's your first...
There's that one psycho girl who broke into the guy's house that she was all in love with, that I know I'm not being hyperbolic when I say this, but text messaged him 70,000 times in one day, in a 24-hour period. That is nuts. So, I mean, 100 times is a lot. But that chick, if you've heard, you probably heard the story if you watch Mike a lot. She's a loony bin. I mean, she is out there. When the press was questioning her, she's in her jail garb and just going off about numbers and equaling love. And yeah, it makes no sense.
First thing, you're going to turn off your phone. You're going to bounce your phone off a wall. But she works in tech. She can't exactly just do that. So she would block all his numbers. He would still find a way to call her. She would block him on social media. He would still find a way to contact her. She would block all private numbers. He figured it out. How, in fact, he even got her phone number is a mystery. She never gave it to him. Every time they would contact when they were friends, they would talk online. In November 2022, that's when she told him, all right, stop. Stop talking to me. You stop trying to contact me. Verbally, she said it twice. 2 times. Stop. Obviously, he didn't listen. He would call nearby businesses, asking for her. He would manage to get in contact with her, saying that he was in her neighborhood and that he was coming over. He would then go to nearby businesses in her neighborhood, go into them, use their phones to call her.
Wow.
He would call, cry, begging her to meet with him. He would message her saying, delete your Instagram or make it public so I can see too. Another particular time, he was parked in her neighborhood. He was watching her house. He saw her husband. He waited till her husband, Millard, left. He was going to Australia, and as soon as he left the house and was out of the area, he called her door with flowers. He is watching her all the time. He would send things like jewelry, a neck scarf, which, Zoe would immediately give to the police and report these incidents to the police, but nothing happened. In one report she made to the police, she wrote how he threatened to show up into her front yard and light himself and her tree, which they had in the front yard, on fire.
Wow.
He said he would do this to prove that he would love her forever. And he said that nothing short of his own death would stop him from obsessing over her. As you can imagine, this absolutely wreaked havoc on her psychology. One time in January, she had to have a back surgery. And she was scared shitless because she knew that if she had surgery, she wouldn't be able to run if something happened. She developed anxiety, insomnia. Her and her husband, Millard, became so fearful that he would one day break in and do God knows what to them. That knocking on the door and calling them just wouldn't cut the mustard anymore. Unfortunately, we found out. On the 2nd of March 2023, a bench warrant was issued for Ramin Kodakaramreza's arrest. He was charged with 1 count of misdemeanor stalking and 2 counts of telephone harassment. The very next day, a judge granted a temporary order of protection, with a hearing set for a non-temporary order of protection. So this was at the start of March. Zoe was requesting that this temporary order would last 99 years. She knew, he would never stop. He had serious issues, but this wasn't her goddamn problem to deal with. That's his problem. Although whatever, mad shit was going on in his head, he was dangerous at this point. Yeah. And for her, what it started off as just, trying to help out other people, help out people maybe who were in her situation, give them a leg up. It turned into getting the attention of this guy who turned out to be a full-blown psychopath. Non-temporary order of protection. So this was at the start of March. Zoe was requesting that this temporary order would last 99 years. She knew, he would never stop. He had serious issues, but this wasn't her goddamn problem to deal with. That's his problem. Although whatever, mad shit was going on in his head, he was dangerous at this point. Yeah. And for her, what it started off as just, trying to help out other people, help out people maybe who were in her situation, give them a leg up. It turned into getting the attention of this guy who turned out to be a full-blown psychopath. Now, one thing about Rahman is he never had any prior arrests or anything, like no history at all. But something in him. So even though this order of protection was granted, there was one problem. The police in Redmond, they couldn't find him. They couldn't make contact with Rahman. Well, for one...
Sorry, guys.
He lived out of state. He lived in Texas. And two, as a truck driver, you never know where he is. Then, late on the 9th of March, he crept up this very quiet, leafy, residential street in his red truck. The road, it was on a hill. He glided his red truck up. Nobody spotted him. Nobody saw him. This was a Thursday night. Nobody would have been around to witness anything. How long he waited, how long he was watching that house, no one knows, but he had just been there the day before. What was going through his messed up mind, nobody knows, but at about 1:30 a.m., he got out of his truck and he started walking towards a house he knew, the surroundings very, very well. He'd been stalking it for months, and the day before, as I said, he had pretty much done a trial run of what he was about to do. And he found that one of the bedroom windows would give him access into the house. It appears he got in, and there he encountered Zore's mother.
Somebody's talking the shit out of you. You would think that you might be a little bit more cautious about locking your windows, locking everything. I mean, this dude obviously had an interest more than just the Iranian language, Farsi. I mean, if he is able to find all her information about leaving the state, going here, going there, getting into these accounts, getting into that accounts. I mean, I'm sure her and her husband were pretty damn smart, in all things computer related, not with the exception of programming. I don't know if they were, programmers too. I missed that part. But, there's always a way to block, someone. So somebody has to be super talented at bypassing a lot of that. So maybe that's why his interest in her first begun. Because he didn't want to be a truck driver. He probably felt like, hey, I have talent in the computer field. And just his sick fucking mind just went places it shouldn't have.
They had some kind of altercation, and she managed though to flee the house. She managed to book it. She ran out of the house. She ran to a neighbor's house, slamming on the door, and in there she managed to call the police. But she would say that as she was running, she had heard shots ring out right behind her.
We have the active hostage situation. The shooter is not detained.
Redmond officers arrived real soon and drew their weapons with reports of an active shooter who also happened to be an insane person. And it didn't take long for them to find the first person. As they drew out their sidearms, walked towards the house, called out Redmond Police Department, just at the front door, they found Millett. Now, he was still alive at the time, but he would pass away within minutes. He had been shot once in the chest. He'd been shot and he'd managed to try and run out of the house to escape, but he collapsed just at the door. Police then went through the house, slowly calling out, checking every room, until they eventually got to the master bedroom. And there is where they found Zoe. She'd been shot. She'd been shot dead. and on the ground beside her lay this psycho.
You know, in a sense, I feel like, I don't know what the quiet wording would be to use, but so that neither one of them suffered being a widow from such a horrific crime by some delusional fuck. I mean, in a way, it was good that they both passed away, because I don't know how a person could live after, you know, your wife, your spouse, you know, the person that you love. You know, granted, it's a good marriage and all, but how you could live with life going on after that would just be so hard.
He, after shooting Milad and shooting Zoe while she was in bed, he turned the gun on himself. He said this would only end with his death. It shouldn't have had to end with hers too, and it probably went out exactly as he hoped, that they would go together, which kind of makes this just all the more sickening. She'd done everything right. She'd contacted the police multiple times. In January, in December, filing the order in March. They both did everything right. And still, there was a guy who just couldn't take no for an answer. A guy who had lost his mind and had then done one of the most horrific and disturbing acts of finally being so obsessed with somebody he couldn't stop, and eventually he broke in and murdered them.
This is the absolute worst outcome, for a stalking case. A restraining order is simply a piece of paper that allows officers to take enforcement action should a suspect violate the court order, but a piece of paper does not protect a person when someone is intent on causing them harm.
It's a real tragic story of, as I said, people who did everything right, and still, Zoe just happened to have a presence one day, a platform to speak and try and help people, and one person just latched onto it like a goddamn tick. And eventually was just sucking the life out of her until he had to end her life and end his own, because he killed her because he was so obsessed with her, but it seems like he also couldn't live without her. Just a real sad, sick piece of shit.
Yeah, yeah.